Darkness. The sound of a church bell tolls in the distance. 3 chimes, then silence. Welcome to Blackwood Ridge, population 8427. A town where everyone knows everyone, where church spires reach higher than any other buildings, and where secrets hide in plain sight. If you were to visit Blackwood Ridge in the early 2000s, you would hear the same name mentioned in every church, regardless of denomination. Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, Episcopal, it didn't matter. The Walther family had touched them all with their generosity. Alexander and Elellanar Walther moved to Blackwood Ridge in 1992. No one knew exactly where they came from. Some said Boston, others claimed New York. A few whispered about Europe, pointing to Alexander's occasional accent that slipped through when he was agitated. What everyone did know was that the Walthers were wealthy, enormously wealthy. They purchased the old Blackwood estate, a sprawling Victorian mansion that had stood empty for nearly 2 decades, and spent a small fortune renovating it. The Walthers employed a small army of workers for the renovation, but oddly, most were brought in from outside Blackwood Ridge. The few local contractors who worked on the project were only allowed to renovate specific areas of the home. None were permitted to enter the East Wing. At the time, no one thought much of it. Rich people are entitled to their eccentricities, after all, and the Walthers more than made up for any peculiarities with their extraordinary generosity. Within their first year in Blackwood Ridge, the Walthers donated $250,000 to St. Mary's Catholic Church for a new roof. 6 months later, they funded a complete renovation of the First Baptist Church's community center. By their 3rd year in town, they had contributed substantially to every single house of worship in Blackwood Ridge and the surrounding areas. They attended services somewhere every Sunday, though never at the same church twice in a row. They hosted charity events for religious causes. They funded mission trips. They paid for summer camps for underprivileged youth through church programs. Alexander and Elellanar Walther were, by all appearances, living saints. Everyone loved the Walthers, Margaret says, her wrinkled hands fidgeting in her lap. How could we not? They were saving our historic churches, funding our community programs. Alexander was charming. Elellanar was gracious. They seemed like the perfect couple. Margaret pauses, her eyes darting away from the camera. But there were always whispers. The first peculiarity that residents of Blackwood Ridge noticed was that despite their active involvement in the community, the Walthers never hosted events at their home. Charity functions were always held at churches or community centers. Even the most prominent citizens of Blackwood Ridge had never set foot inside the Walther mansion. The second peculiarity was the staff. The Walthers employed a significant household staff, all from outside Blackwood Ridge. These employees lived on the property and rarely ventured into town. When they did, they kept to themselves and deflected questions about their employers. But the third peculiarity, the one that sparked the most gossip, involved the children. When the Walthers arrived in Blackwood Ridge, they brought 5 children with them, 3 boys and 2 girls. None of them attended the local schools. The Walthers claimed they were homeschooled. The children were occasionally seen in town during the first year, always with either Alexander or Elellanar, never alone, never with local children. And then, sometime during the second year, the children stopped appearing in public altogether. People asked questions, of course, Margaret continues. Elellanar always had the same answer. The children were focused on their studies. They were gifted, she said. They needed specialized education. Alexander would add that they traveled frequently for educational opportunities. It seemed plausible. They were wealthy after all. They could afford the best for their children. Margaret leans forward, her voice dropping to nearly a whisper. But some of us wondered if we ever actually saw the same children twice. There was something not quite right. Their eyes. Something in their eyes wasn't right. What no one in Blackwood Ridge knew then was that the east wing of the Walther mansion had been transformed into something entirely different from the rest of the house. While the main portion of the mansion featured restored Victorian splendor, the east wing had been gutted and rebuilt with modern materials. Soundproofed walls, security cameras, reinforced doors with electronic locks, and windows that looked like normal glass from the outside but were actually made of a specialized material that prevented anyone from seeing in This is where our story truly begins. With Rebecca Chen, a journalist for the Boston Herald, who arrived in Blackwood Ridge in the fall of 2003 to write what she thought would be a simple human interest story about small-town religious philanthropy. Rebecca had been assigned to write about the Walthers as part of a series on modern philanthropists. Her editor had handed her a folder containing newspaper clippings about the family's donations to religious institutions across New England. It seemed like a straightforward assignment. Interview the generous couple, take some photos, write a heartwarming piece about faith and charity. She expected to be in and out of Blackwood Ridge in 2 days. She would end up staying for 6 months. Rebecca's first indication that this story might be more complicated than she anticipated came within hours of her arrival in Blackwood Ridge. After checking into the Blackwood Inn, she mentioned to the proprietor, Martha Keene, that she was in town to interview the Walthers. "Good luck with that," Martha said with a tight smile. "The Walthers don't do interviews." Rebecca explained that she had an appointment. Her editor had arranged it through the Walthers' representative. "Well, that's a first," Martha replied. "Been here 11 years, and I've never known them to talk to reporters." When Rebecca pressed for more information, Martha became oddly reticent. "They're good people," she said finally. "Very generous, very private. That's all anyone needs to know." Rebecca spent that afternoon walking through Blackwood Ridge, noting the immaculate condition of every church she passed. She spoke to several locals, all of whom echoed Martha's assessment. The Walthers were generous, the Walthers were private, the Walthers were good Christians who preferred to keep to themselves. At St. Patrick's, Rebecca met Father Thomas Riley, a priest in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. Unlike the others Rebecca had spoken to, Father Riley didn't immediately sing the Walthers' praises. "Their generosity has been a blessing," he said carefully, "but I've always believed that true charity isn't measured by dollar amounts." When Rebecca asked what he meant, Father Riley hesitated. "I've been a priest for nearly 40 years, Ms. Chen. I've learned to trust my instincts about people, and something about the Walthers has never felt right to me." "In what way?" Rebecca asked. Father Riley shook his head. "I can't put my finger on it. Perhaps it's nothing. But I've always wondered about those children. Their children. They brought 5 children with them when they moved here. Beautiful children. I used to see them at Mass occasionally, during the Walthers' first year here. Then, nothing. I asked Eleanor about them once. She said they were attending a private boarding school in Europe. But what, Father?" Father Riley looked troubled. "I saw a boy, about 2 years ago, at the mansion. I was driving past and saw him looking out a window in the East Wing, just for a moment, before a curtain was pulled shut. He didn't look like a child who was away at boarding school in Europe. Could it have been a different child? A relative visiting, perhaps?" "Perhaps," Father Riley conceded. "But the look on that child's face, I still think about it sometimes. He looked frightened." The Walther mansion sat on 20 acres of wooded land at the edge of town. A tall iron fence surrounded the property, with a gate that was supposedly always closed to uninvited visitors. But as Rebecca approached for her scheduled interview, the gate swung open automatically. She drove up a long, winding driveway lined with ancient oak trees, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The mansion gradually came into view, a massive Victorian structure with a distinctive tower at one corner and 2 wings extending from the main building like arms reaching outward. The East Wing looked different from the rest of the house. While the main building and West Wing featured ornate Victorian details, the East Wing appeared plainer, more modern somehow. The windows were the same shape as those in the rest of the house, but they reflected light differently. And although several windows in the main house were open to the pleasant fall air, every window in the East Wing was closed, the curtains drawn. Rebecca was met at the door by a tall, thin man who introduced himself as Garrett, the Walthers' house manager. He had a precise way of speaking that Rebecca couldn't quite place. Not quite an accent, but something deliberate in his enunciation. "Mr. and Mrs. Walther are waiting for you in the parlor," Garrett said. "Please follow me and please stay with me at all times. Some areas of the house are undergoing renovation." As Rebecca followed Garrett through the entrance hall, noting the museum-quality artwork on the walls and the immaculate antique furniture. She caught a glimpse of a long corridor that she presumed led to the east wing. Unlike the rest of the house, which was warmly lit and richly decorated, this corridor appeared stark and modern, with recessed lighting and white walls. Before she could get a better look, Garrett smoothly stepped into her line of sight. "This way, Ms. Chen," he said, gesturing toward a different doorway. Alexander and Elellanar Walther rose to greet Rebecca as she entered the parlor. Alexander was tall and distinguished, with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes. Elellanar was petite and elegant, her blonde hair pulled back in a classic chignon. Both were dressed impeccably in what Rebecca recognized as extremely expensive, though conservative clothing. "Miss Chen," Alexander said, extending his hand. "Welcome to our home. We rarely grant interviews, but when we heard about your series on faith-based philanthropy, we felt it might serve a greater purpose. Our only request," Elellanar added, "is that you focus on the work, not on us. We're merely stewards of the blessings we've received." The interview proceeded pleasantly enough, with the Walthers sharing carefully curated anecdotes about their charitable giving. They spoke eloquently about the importance of supporting religious institutions, about community and faith. But Rebecca noticed that they revealed virtually nothing about themselves, their backgrounds, their careers, how they had accumulated their wealth, and they never mentioned their children. When Rebecca finally asked about their family, a nearly imperceptible tension filled the room. "We have been blessed with children," Elellanar said after a brief pause. "They're away at school at the moment." "All 5 of them?" Rebecca asked. "I understood from talking to people in town that you have 5 children." Alexander and Elellanar exchanged a glance. "We've had several children in our care over the years," Alexander said carefully. "Some were with us temporarily, foster situations, you might say, though we consider all children who have passed through our home to be our family," Elellanar added smoothly. Before Rebecca could ask a follow-up question, a sharp sound came from somewhere deep in the house, a metallic clang like a heavy door closing. Alexander's eyes darted to the doorway. "Garrett will see you out now, Ms. Chen," he said, rising abruptly. "We have another appointment." As Garrett led Rebecca back through the house, she deliberately took a wrong turn, stepping quickly down the corridor she had noticed earlier. "Ms. Chen," Garrett called sharply, "that area is not open to visitors." But Rebecca had already seen enough to confirm her suspicion. The corridor led to a modern security door with an electronic keypad. It looked entirely out of place in the Victorian mansion. "My apologies," she said, rejoining Garrett. "I thought that was the way we came in." Garrett's expression remained impassive, but his eyes were cold. "A common mistake," he said. "The house can be confusing to first-time visitors." That evening, Rebecca reviewed her notes from the interview, frustrated by how little substantive information she had gathered. The Walthers had spoken at length about their charitable giving, but had deflected every question about their personal lives. She turned on her laptop and began searching for information about the Walthers from before their arrival in Blackwood Ridge. To her surprise, she found almost nothing. No previous addresses, no career information, no records of their charitable giving before 1992. It was as if Alexander and Elellanar Walther hadn't existed before they moved to Blackwood Ridge. Even stranger, she could find no record of their children. No birth announcements, no school records, nothing. Rebecca called her editor in Boston, explaining her concerns. "Something doesn't add up, Jim. These people have donated millions to churches all over New England, but I can't find any background on them. No one in town seems to know where they came from or how they made their money. And there's something strange about their children, or the lack thereof. Maybe they're just private people," Jim suggested. "Not everyone wants their life story on display." "It's more than that," Rebecca insisted. "There's this east wing of their house that seems to be sealed off from the rest of the property. High security, modern construction in an otherwise historic home. And when I asked about their kids, they got evasive." "What are you suggesting, Rebecca?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to stay in Blackwood Ridge a bit longer. There's a story here beyond wealthy couple donates to churches." Over the next week, Rebecca dug deeper into the Walther mystery. She visited the town records office, spoke to real estate agents who might have been involved in the mansion sale, and continued interviewing locals about the enigmatic family. Most people repeated the same information. The Walthers were generous, private, and kept to themselves. But occasionally, Rebecca would catch something else. A hesitation, a glance away, a change in tone when the children were mentioned. "I worked for them briefly when they first moved to town," Sarah Pembroke told Rebecca. "They sat in Sarah's small apartment above the town's bookstore. Just for about 3 months, I was hired to help with the children while they settled in." "What were the children like?" Rebecca asked. Sarah hesitated. "Quiet, very well behaved, too well behaved if you know what I mean. Children should laugh, should play, should get into mischief sometimes. These children, they seemed afraid to make noise." "Afraid of what?" "I don't know. I never saw the Walthers mistreat them. But there were rules. So many rules. The children were never to enter certain parts of the house. They were never to speak to visitors. They were never to mention certain things." "What things, Sarah?" Sarah looked away. "I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I've probably said too much already. They paid me very well to forget what I saw." "What did you see?" "I need to go," Sarah said suddenly. "I have an appointment. I shouldn't have agreed to talk to you." Rebecca's next stop was the Blackwood Ridge Elementary School, where she spoke to Diane Lambert, who had been the principal when the Walthers arrived in town. "Yes, Eleanor Walther came to see me shortly after they moved here," Diane confirmed. "She explained that they would be homeschooling their children. She had all the proper documentation, curriculum plans, teaching credentials. Everything was in order." "Did you ever meet the children?" "Just once. Eleanor brought them with her for that initial meeting. They were memorable children." "In what way?" Diane considered her words carefully. They didn't look alike. Different hair colors, different features. Yet there was something similar about them. Their manner, perhaps. They stood perfectly still the whole time, didn't fidget like normal children. And they watched Eleanor constantly, as if waiting for signals. "Did that seem unusual to you?" "At the time, I thought perhaps they were just nervous about being in a new place, but looking back," Diane trailed off. "Yes, there was a moment, just a brief moment, when Eleanor stepped out to take a phone call. The oldest boy looked at me and opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. But then Eleanor returned, and he immediately went back to that same blank expression. I've thought about that moment many times over the years." That evening, Rebecca drove past the Walther mansion, slowing as she approached. Most of the house was dark, but there were lights visible in some windows of the east wing. As she watched, a silhouette appeared at one of the windows, small, child-sized. Then another figure, adult-sized, approached, and the curtain was quickly drawn. Rebecca parked her car a short distance away and waited, watching the house. After about 20 minutes, she saw headlights approaching. A large black SUV with tinted windows turned into the Walther property. The gates opened automatically, then closed behind it. Curious, Rebecca made a note of the time, 8:17 p.m. Back at the inn, Rebecca created a timeline of everything she had learned so far. The Walthers had appeared in Blackwood Ridge in 1992 with 5 children. The children had been seen occasionally during the first year, then disappeared from public view. Various explanations had been given: homeschooling, boarding school abroad, specialized education programs. But no one in town seemed to have any concrete information about the children's whereabouts, and Rebecca had found no records of any Walther children attending any boarding schools in Europe or elsewhere. What she did find, when she expanded her search, were scattered reports from other small towns across the country. Reports of a wealthy couple with different names but similar descriptions, who had appeared suddenly, made generous donations to local churches, and then disappeared after a few years. Each report mentioned children, though the numbers varied. "The Prestons," said Detective Michael Ramirez of the Boulder Police Department, "Curtis and Evelyn Preston, lived here from 1987 to 1991, donated a fortune to local churches, had 4 children supposedly, left town suddenly after questions were raised about the children's welfare. By the time a formal investigation was launched, they were gone without a trace." "And you think the Prestons might be the Walthers?" Rebecca asked. "I can't say for certain without seeing them," Detective Ramirez replied. But the pattern matches, and the timing works. They disappeared from here right before your Walthers appeared in Massachusetts. Rebecca spent hours at the town records office, searching for any documentation related to the Walthers' arrival in Blackwood Ridge. She found the property purchase records. The mansion had been bought for cash through a shell company called Providential Holdings. The company's listed address led to a P.O. box in Delaware. Based on what you've described, Dr. Morgan said, I would be concerned about these children. The extreme isolation, the rigid behavioral control, the rotating cast of children over the years, these are all red flags. What do you think could be happening? Rebecca asked. Dr. Morgan's expression was grave. Best case scenario, some form of extreme religious homeschooling situation where the children are being kept from worldly influences. Worst case, there are unfortunately people who use religious charity as a cover for child trafficking or abuse. Would that explain the security measures in the East Wing? It might. It could also explain why different children have been seen over the years. If they're moving children through the home rather than raising the same children continuously. Rebecca knew she was crossing a line from journalism into something else entirely, but the welfare of children was at stake. She parked her car on a secluded road that ran behind the Walther property and made her way through the woods toward the mansion. The moon was nearly full, providing just enough light for her to navigate without a flashlight. She carried a small digital camera with night vision capabilities. Not professional-grade equipment, but enough to document anything she might see. As she approached the property line, she spotted the security fence. It was tall, at least 10 feet, with pointed tips at the top. Not impossible to climb, but certainly a deterrent. More concerning were the small devices mounted at intervals along the fence. Motion sensors or cameras, Rebecca guessed. She followed the fence line, looking for any weak points or blind spots. About a quarter mile from where she had started, she found what she was looking for. A large tree had fallen against the fence during a recent storm, partially crushing it and creating a gap just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Heart-pounding, Rebecca made her way onto the Walther property. She stayed within the tree line, working her way gradually toward the east wing of the mansion. As she got closer, she could see that the architectural style of the east wing was indeed different from the rest of the house. More modern, more institutional somehow. And the windows, now that she could see them up close, were clearly not standard glass. They had a slight greenish tint and appeared to be much thicker than normal windows. Security glass, perhaps, designed to be shatterproof. Rebecca crouched behind a large shrub about 50 feet from the east wing, watching and waiting. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, a light came on in a ground floor room. Through the window, Rebecca could see a sparse, institutional-looking space, more like a hospital room than a bedroom. White walls, simple furniture bolted to the floor. A door in the room opened and a child entered, a boy of perhaps 8 or 9. He was followed by a woman in what looked like a nurse's uniform. The woman gestured toward the bed, and the boy climbed in. The woman checked something on a clipboard, then left the room, closing the door behind her. The boy sat motionless on the edge of the bed for several long moments. Then, slowly, he turned toward the window. Rebecca's breath caught. The boy was looking right at her, or at least in her direction. She couldn't tell if he could actually see her in the darkness outside. Carefully, she raised her camera and took several photos. The boy continued to stare toward the window. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and placed it flat against the glass. Rebecca felt a chill run through her. Was this a cry for help? She raised her own hand instinctively, mirroring the boy's gesture from her hiding place. Suddenly, the boy's expression changed to one of alarm. He quickly moved away from the window just as the door to his room opened again. The woman in the nurse's uniform returned, accompanied by a man Rebecca hadn't seen before, tall, with a shaved head and the build of a security guard. The man went straight to the window, scanning the darkness outside. Rebecca pressed herself lower behind the shrub, hardly daring to breathe. After what seemed like an eternity, the man stepped back from the window. He said something to the boy, who shook his head vigorously. The man's posture became threatening. He towered over the child, pointing his finger and speaking forcefully. The boy cowered on the bed. Rebecca had seen enough. She needed to get help for these children. Carefully, she began to back away from her hiding spot, and then her foot came down on a dry branch. The crack seemed deafening in the quiet night. The man at the window immediately turned toward the sound. He spoke urgently to the nurse, who rushed from the room. Moments later, floodlights illuminated the grounds around the east wing. Rebecca ran, crashing through the underbrush, no longer concerned about stealth. Behind her, she could hear voices calling out, flashlight beams sweeping through the trees. She made it to the damaged section of fence and squeezed through, tearing her jacket in the process. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. With shaking hands, Rebecca started her car and drove away, constantly checking her rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. When she was certain she wasn't being followed, she pulled over to examine the photos she had taken. The images were grainy but clear enough to show the institutional nature of the room. The boy's solemn face, his hand pressed against the glass. Not conclusive evidence of wrongdoing, perhaps, but certainly supporting her suspicions that something wasn't right at the Walther mansion. "I need to speak with Detective Ramirez," Rebecca said. "It's urgent. Tell him it's Rebecca Chen calling about the Preston case." While she waited on hold, Rebecca transferred the photos from her camera to her laptop and sent copies to her own email account and to her editor in Boston. "Ms. Chen," Detective Ramirez's voice came through the line. "Do you have new information about the Prestons?" Rebecca quickly explained what she had discovered in Blackwood Ridge and what she had witnessed at the Walther mansion. "I believe the Walthers are the Prestons," she concluded, "and I believe they're holding children in some kind of secured facility in the east wing of their mansion. I don't know if it's the same children they arrived with or new ones, but something is very wrong." "Have you contacted local authorities?" Ramirez asked. "Not yet. I wanted to gather more evidence first, and frankly, I'm not sure who to trust. The Walthers have donated significant amounts to local organizations, including the police department's community outreach programs. You need to be careful, Ms. Chen. If these are the same people I investigated years ago, they have resources and connections, and they've managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement for a long time. What should I do?" "Document everything, build your case carefully, and watch your back." "I need your help, Father," Rebecca said. They sat in Father Riley's office, a modest room lined with theological books. "I believe children are being held against their will at the Walther mansion." Father Riley looked troubled. "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Chen." Rebecca showed him the photos she had taken. "I've been researching the Walthers' background. They appeared in Blackwood Ridge out of nowhere in 1992. Before that, a couple matching their description was in Boulder, Colorado, using different names. Before that, possibly other locations. Always the same pattern: generous donations to churches, children who are rarely seen in public, sudden departures when questions are raised. If what you're suggesting is true, why would they donate so generously to churches? What would be the purpose?" "I think it's cover," Rebecca said. "Who would suspect child abusers who support every church in town? They buy goodwill. They establish themselves as pillars of the community. They make themselves above suspicion." Father Riley studied the photos again. "The boy in this image, something about him seems familiar." He looked up at Rebecca. "What do you need from me?" "I need someone from the community who can vouch for me if I go to the authorities. Someone respected, whose word carries weight." Father Riley nodded slowly. "If children are in danger, we have a moral obligation to act. I'll help you." Chief William Cooper was skeptical. He examined the photos Rebecca had taken and listened to her explanation, his expression growing increasingly dubious. "Let me get this straight," he said when she had finished. "You're accusing the Walthers, who have donated millions to this community, who funded our new community center, who pay for our youth programs, of being child abusers or traffickers, based on some grainy photos taken while you were trespassing on their property." "I understand how it sounds," Rebecca admitted. "But there are too many unanswered questions. Where did the Walthers come from? Where did their money come from? What happened to the children they arrived with? Why is the east wing of their home secured like a prison?" "The Walthers are private people," Chief Cooper said. "Being private isn't a crime. Having security on your property isn't a crime. As for their backgrounds, wealthy people often prefer to keep their business dealings confidential. Will, please, Father Riley interjected. I've had my own concerns about the Walthers for years. Something isn't right. At least look into it. Chief Cooper sighed. I'll make some inquiries, discreetly, but that's all I can promise. As they left the police station, Rebecca felt a sense of unease. He's not going to do anything, is he? Will Cooper is a good man, Father Riley said, but the Walthers have been very good to this town. It's difficult to believe the worst about people who have done so much good. That's exactly what they count on, Rebecca replied. As Rebecca approached the Blackwood Inn, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street, the same type of vehicle she had seen entering the Walther property. A man sat in the driver's seat, watching the inn. Rebecca walked past the inn, continuing down the street as if heading elsewhere. She took out her phone and pretended to make a call, using the opportunity to snap a photo of the SUV and its license plate. She then doubled back, entering the inn through a side door. Once inside, she went straight to her room and began packing her belongings. If the Walthers knew she had been on their property, they might also know where she was staying. She didn't feel safe at the inn anymore. Rebecca checked into the Pine Grove Motel, 20 miles from Blackwood Ridge. She paid cash and used a fake name. Journalistic ethics be damned, her safety came first. In her motel room, she set up her laptop and continued her investigation. She ran the license plate she had photographed through a database her newspaper had access to. The SUV was registered to a company called Sentinel Security Services, a private security firm based in Boston. Further research revealed that Sentinel specialized in high-value asset protection and employed many former military and law enforcement personnel. Their client list was not public, but it wasn't a stretch to imagine the Walthers might employ such a firm. Jim, I need more resources, Rebecca said. This story is bigger than I thought. I believe the Walthers are part of some kind of organization that moves from town to town, using religious philanthropy as cover for something involving children. What kind of resources are we talking about? I need a researcher to dig deeper into the Walthers' past, not just Boulder, but before that. And I need someone to look into Providential Holdings and Sentinel Security Services. Plus, I could use another reporter on the ground here. I think I'm being watched. This sounds more like a police matter than a newspaper story, Rebecca. I've tried the police, they're not convinced. And even if they were, the Walthers have connections. If they get wind of an official investigation, they might disappear again, with the children. Jim sighed. All right, I'll send Jake to help you, and I'll put Maria on research. But Rebecca, be careful. If these people are as dangerous as you think, don't take unnecessary risks. Over the next week, Rebecca and her colleague Jake dug deeper into the Walther mystery. They identified 3 more locations where a couple matching the Walthers' description had lived under different names: Spokane, Washington, 1983-1987, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1979-1983, and Savannah, Georgia, 1975-1979. In each location, the pattern was the same: sudden appearance, generous religious donations, questions about children, sudden departure. Meanwhile, Maria uncovered disturbing information about Providential Holdings. The company was connected to a network of similar shell corporations, all ultimately linked to an entity called the New Dawn Foundation, a supposedly religious organization with no public-facing presence. I worked for them in Tulsa, Patricia Lawson confirmed. They called themselves the Marshalls then, Gregory and Catherine Marshall. Same pattern, big donations to churches, very private about their home life. I lasted 6 months as their housekeeper before I quit. Why did you quit? Rebecca asked. Patricia's expression darkened. The children. There was something wrong about the whole situation. They had 3 children then, or at least there were 3 living in the house while I worked there. But I found items belonging to other children. Clothing, toys, personal items with different names. What made you leave specifically? One night I heard crying coming from the basement. I wasn't supposed to go down there. It was strictly off limits to household staff. But I couldn't ignore a child's cries. When I went downstairs, I found a little girl locked in a small room. She was terrified, begging for her mother. What did you do? I went to Gregory, Mr. Marshall, immediately. He told me the girl was troubled, that they were providing specialized care for her, that I had misunderstood the situation. He offered me a significant bonus to forget what I had seen. I took the money. I needed it at the time. But I gave notice the next day. I couldn't be part of whatever they were doing. Did you report what you saw to authorities? Patricia looked ashamed. No. I was afraid. They were powerful people with connections throughout the community. And the way Gregory looked at me when I said I was leaving, I knew he was dangerous. So we have a couple who've been moving around the country for at least 30 years, Jake summarized. Different names, different locations, but always the same pattern. Always children involved, always religious philanthropy as their public face. And always questions about what happens to the children, Rebecca added. Children who appear, then disappear. Children who are kept isolated, who seem afraid. The question is, what are they doing with these children, and why? Rebecca's phone rang. It was Maria calling from Boston. I found something, Maria said without preamble. The New Dawn Foundation. It's registered as a religious organization, but there's almost no public information about it. However, I managed to access some sealed court records from a case in the early 1970s. What kind of case? A custody dispute. A woman named Anna Walther, possibly a relative of your Alexander Walther, was involved with a religious group called the Children of the New Dawn. She took her own children and fled the group, then tried to get custody of other children still in the community. The case was ultimately dismissed, and the records were sealed at the request of the Children of the New Dawn's lawyers. Can you send me everything you found? Already did. Check your email. Rebecca pored over the documents Maria had sent. The Children of the New Dawn had been a small religious community founded in the late 1960s by a man named Elias Shepherd. The group believed that specially chosen children, vessels they called them, would play a crucial role in an approaching religious awakening. According to Anna Walther's testimony, the group had begun taking in children from outside the community, orphans, foster children, even purchasing children from desperate families in impoverished areas. These children were kept separate from the community's own children and subjected to what Anna described as preparation rituals for their role as vessels. When Anna had attempted to rescue some of these children, the group had countered with accusations that she was mentally unstable. The case had been dismissed, and Anna had disappeared shortly afterward. My God, Rebecca murmured. What if the Walthers aren't running from law enforcement? What if they're running from this cult? What if they're trying to rescue children? Or, Jake suggested grimly, what if they're still part of it? What if they're continuing the work of the Children of the New Dawn, just in a more decentralized way? Move from town to town, use religious philanthropy as cover, gather children, then move on before anyone gets suspicious. Have you ever heard of a group called the Children of the New Dawn? Rebecca asked when Ramirez answered. There was a long silence on the line. Then, where did you hear that name? Rebecca explained what Maria had found. There were rumors, Ramirez said finally. Nothing concrete, nothing we could prove. But when we were investigating the Prestons, your Walthers, some witnesses mentioned religious teachings that didn't align with mainstream Christianity. References to vessels and preparation. We could never find any direct connection to a specific group. What happened to the Children of the New Dawn? Do they still exist? Officially, they disbanded in the mid-1970s after a series of investigations into child welfare concerns. But there have been whispers over the years about splinter groups continuing the work. Nothing confirmed. We need to get inside that East Wing, Rebecca said. We need concrete evidence of what's happening to those children. The security is too tight, Jake pointed out. And after your previous attempt, they're probably on high alert. Then we need leverage, something to force them to let us in, or to bring in authorities who can't be bought off or intimidated. As they watched, a familiar black SUV emerged from the gates of the Walther property. That's the same vehicle that was watching the inn, Rebecca said. Follow it, but keep your distance. The SUV led them to St. Mary's Catholic Church, where a charity event was being held. Rebecca recognized Alexander and Elellanar Walther among the attendees, mingling with local dignitaries. They're both here. she whispered to Jake. "This might be our chance to get into the mansion." "Are you crazy? Even if we could get past the gate and the security system, the place will still be staffed." "Not necessarily the East Wing. From what we've gathered, only certain staff members are allowed in that section. With the Walthers at this event, the security might be reduced." Jake looked at her incredulously. "You're really suggesting we break into the mansion?" "That's not journalism, Rebecca. That's burglary." "It's not about a story anymore," Rebecca replied. "It's about those children." "I need your help again, Father," Rebecca said urgently. "I need you to keep the Walthers occupied at the event. Make sure they stay as long as possible." Father Riley looked troubled. "What are you planning, Miss Chen?" "The less you know, the better. Just trust me. It's for the children." After a moment's hesitation, Father Riley nodded. "I'll do what I can. But please be careful." They used the same damaged section of fence that Rebecca had found before, though she noted that repairs had begun. Another few days, and this entry point would be sealed. This time they moved more cautiously through the woods, staying low and avoiding any dry branches or leaves that might betray their presence. As they approached the house, they could see that there were fewer lights on than before. "The main house looks empty," Jake whispered, "but there are lights in the East Wing." They made their way to a side door that connected the main house to the East Wing, the modern security door with the keypad that Rebecca had glimpsed during her tour. "Now what?" Jake asked. "We can't hack an electronic lock." Rebecca studied the door. "We don't need to. Look." She pointed to a small sign beside the door. "Emergency exit only. Alarm will sound." "That's not helping us," Jake said. "We don't want to trigger an alarm." "No, but it tells us something important. This is an emergency exit from the East Wing into the main house. That means there's a mechanical release on the inside. Fire safety regulations would require it. We just need to find another way into the East Wing. Then we can use this door to access the main house if necessary." They continued around the building, staying close to the walls to avoid the security cameras. At the rear of the East Wing, they found what they were looking for, a delivery entrance with a loading dock. "Service entrances often have less security," Rebecca whispered. "Deliveries need to be made efficiently." The door had both an electronic keypad and a conventional lock. Rebecca examined it closely. "I can't bypass the keypad, but maybe." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small case containing lockpicks. A questionable tool for a journalist to carry, but one that had proven useful in her investigative work before. After several tense minutes, the lock clicked open. "The alarm?" Jake whispered. "We'll know in about 30 seconds if we triggered anything," Rebecca replied, carefully opening the door. They waited, hardly breathing. No sirens sounded, no flashing lights appeared. "I think we're clear," Rebecca said. "The electronic lock must be for entering from the outside. It doesn't trigger an alarm when opened from the inside, and I bypassed the mechanical lock." The interior of the East Wing was nothing like the ornate Victorian decor of the main house. Here, the walls were painted institutional white, the floors covered in linoleum, the lighting harsh and fluorescent. They moved cautiously down the corridor, passing what looked like storage rooms and offices. Through one open door, Rebecca glimpsed what appeared to be medical equipment, an examination table, monitoring devices, cabinets of supplies. "What is this place?" Jake whispered. "It looks like a hospital or a lab." At the end of the corridor, they came to a set of double doors with small windows. Through the windows, they could see another corridor with doors along both sides. Doors with small windows and what appeared to be names or numbers on them. Rebecca tried the handle, locked. But next to the doors was a clipboard hanging on the wall. She took it down and examined it. "It's a schedule," she whispered. "Look, medications, treatments, sessions, and names, Vessel 12, Vessel 17, Vessel 23. "Vessels," Jake repeated, "like in those court documents." Rebecca looked through the windows again. "Those are rooms. I think the children are kept in those rooms." She took out her phone and began photographing the clipboard pages. "We need to get through these doors," she said. "We need to see what's happening to those children." Before Jake could respond, they heard voices from somewhere nearby, coming closer. "Hide," Rebecca hissed, pulling Jake into the nearest room, what appeared to be a supply closet. Through the partially open door, they watched as two people in scrubs walked past, deep in conversation. "Latest batch of results," one was saying. "Dr. Shepard is pleased with the progress." "Vessel 17 is still showing resistance," the other replied. "Increased dosage hasn't helped." "Then we'll try a different approach. Cognitive conditioning worked with Vessel 12. Their voices faded as they moved away down the corridor. "Dr. Shepard," Jake whispered. "As in Elias Shepard, the founder of the Children of the New Dawn?" "We need to get into those rooms," Rebecca said. "We need to see exactly what they're doing." They slipped out of the supply closet and followed the direction the staff members had gone. Around a corner, they found another door, this one with a window that looked into what appeared to be a control room of sorts. Computer monitors displayed feeds from security cameras throughout the facility, and on a wall near the door hung several key cards on a rack. Rebecca looked at Jake. "Cover me." Before he could object, she opened the door. The room was empty. The staff members must have continued on elsewhere. Rebecca quickly grabbed one of the key cards, then rejoined Jake in the corridor. "This should get us through those double doors," she said. They retraced their steps. The key card worked. The double doors unlocked with a soft click. Each room had a small window in the door, and each door had a label: Vessel 12, Vessel 14, Vessel 17, and so on. Rebecca looked through the window of the first door. Inside was a small, sparse room with a bed, a desk, and a chair, all bolted to the floor. Sitting on the bed was a child, a girl of perhaps 10, with dark hair and vacant eyes. She was staring at the wall, rocking slightly. "My God," Rebecca whispered. She raised her phone and took a photo through the window. They moved to the next room. Another child, a boy this time, younger, maybe 7 or 8. He too had that same vacant expression, that same listless posture. Room after room they found children, different ages, different appearances, but all with that same emptiness in their eyes. Some rooms held multiple children. Rebecca photographed everything. "What are they doing to them?" Jake whispered, his voice shaking. In one room, they saw medical equipment, IV stands, monitoring devices. A teenage boy lay on the bed, apparently sedated, with tubes running from his arms to various machines. In another room, they found what looked like a classroom, but with disturbing differences. The walls were covered with strange symbols and phrases. "The vessel opens to receive. Purity brings clarity. The empty vessel awaits filling." On a desk at the front of the room lay a book titled "The Preparation of Vessels, Protocols and Procedures." Rebecca quickly photographed several pages. "This is insane," Jake muttered. "It's some kind of cult brainwashing facility." "It's worse than that," Rebecca said, her voice tight with horror. "Look at this." She pointed to a page she had photographed which detailed something called essence extraction. They believe these children have some kind of special spiritual essence that can be extracted and harvested. That's why they call them vessels. For what purpose? According to this, for the regeneration of the chosen. Whatever that means. Suddenly, an alarm began to sound, a pulsing, shrill noise that echoed through the corridors. "We've been discovered," Jake said. "We need to get out, now." They ran back the way they had come, past the double doors, down the corridor toward the loading dock entrance. But as they rounded a corner, they found their path blocked by 2 security guards, large men in black uniforms, both carrying weapons. "This way," Rebecca gasped, pulling Jake down a different corridor. They found themselves in an unfamiliar section of the facility. Ahead, they saw the emergency exit door that Rebecca had noticed earlier, the one that connected to the main house. "There," she pointed. Jake pushed the door open, and they burst through into the ornate entrance hall of the main mansion. Behind them, they could hear the guards in pursuit. They ran through the mansion, trying doors, looking for a way out. Most were locked. "The front door," Jake suggested. "Too obvious. They'll have it covered." Rebecca led them deeper into the house, looking for a side exit or a window they could use. They found themselves in what appeared to be Alexander Walther's study, a wood-paneled room lined with books and featuring a large desk. "Look for another way out," Rebecca said, moving toward the windows. Jake went to the desk and began opening drawers. "Rebecca," he called, "you need to see this." In an open drawer lay a manila folder labeled Transition Protocol. Inside were documents detailing procedures for relocating vessels and establishing new collection sites. "They're planning to move," Jake said. "Just like before, when questions start being asked, they disappear with the children." The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside spurred them back into motion. Rebecca tried the windows, locked, with no obvious way to open them. "We're trapped," she said. The door to the study burst open. 2 security guards entered, weapons drawn. "Don't move," one ordered. "Put your hands where I can see them." Rebecca and Jake complied, raising their hands slowly. "Phones on the floor, now!" They placed their phones on the carpet. One guard kept his weapon trained on them, while the other collected the phones. "Mr. Walther will want to speak with you," the first guard said. "Both of you come with us. Any sudden moves, and this ends badly." They were led to a room deep in the mansion, a conference room with a long table and several chairs. The guards instructed them to sit, then took positions by the door. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened and Alexander Walther entered, followed by a man Rebecca didn't recognize, elderly, with white hair and piercing blue eyes. "Ms. Chen," Alexander said, his voice cold. "I understood you were writing an article about our charitable work." "I wasn't aware that involved breaking into our home." "What are you doing to those children?" Rebecca demanded. "We saw them. We saw the vessels, the medical equipment, the brainwashing materials." The elderly man stepped forward. "The vessels are being prepared for a greater purpose than you could possibly understand." "Who are you?" Jake asked. The man smiled, a chilling expression devoid of warmth. "My name is Dr. Elias Shepard. I am the founder of the Children of the New Dawn." Rebecca felt a chill run through her. "You're supposed to be dead." The group disbanded in the 1970s. "Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated," Shepard replied. "As for the Children of the New Dawn, we simply became more discreet in our operations." "By kidnapping children?" Rebecca's voice shook with anger. "By brainwashing them. By whatever sick essence extraction process you're performing on them." "The vessels are not ordinary children," Shepard said calmly. "They have been chosen for their unique spiritual qualities. Their essence sustains us, allows us to continue our work across generations." Rebecca looked at Alexander Walther. "Is that why you moved from town to town? Taking new children, using religious philanthropy as cover?" "The churches are important," Alexander replied. "They help us identify potential vessels. Religious communities keep detailed records of their members, especially the children. They trust us because of our generosity. They never question when we express interest in particular children, troubled children, orphaned children, children with special spiritual gifts." "And when people start asking questions, you disappear," Jake said. "Take the children and move to the next town, the next set of churches." "A necessary precaution," Shepard acknowledged, "though one will soon no longer need. We're approaching the culmination of our work, the final gathering of vessels." Rebecca felt sick. "You're insane. All of you." Shepard's expression hardened. "You cannot begin to comprehend what we are building. For centuries, certain individuals have known that human essence can be transferred, can be used to extend life, to enhance abilities. The ancient Egyptians, the Mayans, certain Eastern mystics, all discovered pieces of this truth. We have perfected it." "You're stealing children's lives," Rebecca said, "their futures." "We're fulfilling their purpose," Shepard insisted. "The vessels are honored through their service." Alexander checked his watch. "Enough explanation. The transition is already underway. The vessels are being prepared for transport." "What do we do with these two?" one of the guards asked. Alexander looked at Rebecca and Jake coldly. "They've seen too much. They'll become vessels themselves. Their essence will serve the continuation." They were marched back to the East Wing, through the sterile corridors to a room containing medical equipment. A woman in scrubs, The nurse Rebecca had seen earlier was preparing syringes. 2 new arrivals, Alexander told her. Adult specimens. Prepare them for the initial phase. The nurse nodded and approached with a syringe. Rebecca tensed, looking desperately for an opportunity to escape. Suddenly, a commotion erupted somewhere nearby, shouting, the sound of running feet. One of the guards stepped out to investigate. He returned moments later, his expression urgent. "Sir, we have a problem. Police are at the main gate." Alexander frowned. "How many?" "Multiple vehicles, and there are others at the rear of the property." Alexander turned to Rebecca. "What did you do?" Before she could answer, the facility's alarm system began blaring again. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridor. "Sir," the guard continued, "they have a warrant." "Impossible," Alexander snapped. "No judge in this county would sign a warrant against us." "It's not a local warrant, sir. It's federal." Alexander's face paled. He turned to Shepard. "We need to initiate emergency protocols, now." Shepard nodded grimly. "Prepare the primary vessels for immediate transition. Sanitize the secondary facilities." As they spoke, Rebecca caught Jake's eye and nodded slightly toward the door. The guards were distracted by the crisis. If they were going to make a move, it had to be now. In one fluid motion, Rebecca lunged forward, shoving the nurse aside. Jake simultaneously drove his shoulder into one of the guards, knocking him off balance. They bolted for the door and into the corridor, running toward the sound of the commotion, toward what they hoped was help. Behind them, they could hear Alexander shouting orders. "Lock down the east wing. No one gets in or out." The corridors were in chaos. Staff members ran in all directions, some carrying files, others escorting children. Security guards shouted contradictory orders. Rebecca and Jake pressed themselves against a wall as a group of guards ran past, then continued in the opposite direction. They had no clear plan beyond escaping and finding the police. As they rounded a corner, Rebecca spotted a familiar face. Chief Cooper of the Blackwood Ridge Police, accompanied by several officers in tactical gear. "Chief," she called out. "Here." Cooper spotted them and signaled his officers to move in their direction. "Rebecca Chen," he called. "Are you all right?" "We're okay," she replied as they reached the police. "But the children, they're moving the children. You have to stop them." Cooper nodded grimly. "We know. FBI is already on site. They've been tracking this group for years. Your evidence was the break they needed. The photos you sent to your editor were forwarded to federal authorities." "Shepard is here," Jake said urgently. "Elias Shepard, the founder of the cult. We just spoke to him. And they're trying to destroy evidence, something called sanitizing the facilities." Cooper spoke into his radio, relaying the information. Federal agents in tactical gear swarmed through the facility, securing rooms and detaining staff members. Rebecca and Jake were escorted to safety, given medical attention, and debriefed by FBI agents. From outside, Rebecca watched as children were led from the building. Dozens of them, more than she had realized, were being held there. Some walked with vacant expressions. Others seemed confused, frightened. A few of the older ones appeared relieved, as if they understood they were being rescued. An FBI agent approached Rebecca. "Ms. Chen, I'm Agent Daniels. I want to thank you for your work on this case. We've been trying to locate the children of the New Dawn for years, but they've always stayed one step ahead of us." "Did you get them?" Rebecca asked. "Shepard, the Walthers." Agent Daniels' expression tightened. "We secured most of the facility and most of the children, but there was an escape route from the east wing, a tunnel leading to a garage with vehicles prepared for rapid departure. Shepard and several of the inner circle, including the Walthers, managed to get away with a small number of children." "No," Rebecca whispered. "After all this, they still got away. We have descriptions, identities, methods of operation, more than we've ever had before. Every law enforcement agency in the country will be looking for them. They won't be able to establish another operation like this one." "But they still have some of the children," Jake said. "Yes," Agent Daniels acknowledged, "which is why our work isn't done, and why we'd like your help with the ongoing investigation." Rebecca sat with Agent Daniels, reviewing files and photographs. "The children who were rescued are receiving specialized care," Daniels explained. Many were in the early stages of the preparation process and should recover fully. Others have been in the program longer and will need more extensive rehabilitation. And what exactly was this essence extraction? Rebecca asked. Was it real or just part of their cult beliefs? Daniels sighed. The medical procedures were real, though based on pseudoscience. They were drawing cerebral spinal fluid and blood from the children, processing it with various compounds, and then injecting the resulting serum into Shepard and other inner circle members. They genuinely believed this would transfer life essence and extend their lives. Did it work? Jake asked. Shepard is 92 years old, Daniels replied. He appears to be in his 70s and has the physical capabilities of someone much younger. Is that due to their procedures or just good genetics? Our medical experts are still analyzing the data, but regardless of whether it worked, it was abusive, criminal, and horrific. They told us we were special, the girl said quietly, that we had been chosen to serve a greater purpose. At first, they treated us well, like we were precious. But then the preparation began. Medications that made us compliant, educational sessions that went on for hours, the extractions. Do you know where they might have gone? Rebecca asked gently. Shepard and the others who escaped. The girl hesitated. They talked sometimes about the final gathering place. I heard them mention mountains, somewhere remote. And a name, I think it was Haven or New Haven or something like that. We've identified possible locations in remote mountainous regions, Agent Daniels said, pointing to several marked areas on a map. Based on property records connected to shell companies we've linked to the group and information from the rescued children. They'll have changed their appearances, their names, Rebecca said. But one thing they won't change is their pattern of religious philanthropy. It's how they gain access to communities, how they identify potential vessels. We're monitoring donations to religious organizations in these regions, Daniels confirmed, looking for the patterns you identified. Rebecca sat at a desk, typing intensely on her laptop. The article she was writing wouldn't just be a human interest piece about philanthropy anymore. It would be an expose of a decades-long criminal enterprise masquerading as religious charity. It would be about children stolen from communities that trusted the wrong people. It would be about the darkness that sometimes hides behind a facade of goodness. Montage of headlines. Cult uses church donations as cover for child abuse. Children of the New Dawn. Decades of exploitation exposed. Manhunt continues for cult leader and inner circle. The investigation into the children of the New Dawn continues, Rebecca said in her acceptance speech. 17 of the abducted children remain missing. Elias Shepard and his inner circle, including Alexander and Elellanar Walther, are still at large. But their ability to operate has been severely compromised. Their identities are known. Their methods have been exposed. And most importantly, the truth about what happened behind those walls, in that East Wing, has finally come to light. A black SUV drives slowly down the main street of a picturesque town. It passes a small church where a sign announces a generous donation from the Carlisle Family Foundation for a new community center. Inside the vehicle, an elderly man with dyed hair and colored contact lenses, Elias Shepard, now using a new identity, looks out at the church. Begin again, he says softly. The work continues. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental.